Hello and welcome to Dance Chat with Aubre Hill. This interview series will feature a wide range of differing dance artists as we talk about history, inspiration, teaching, learning, changes in our community, and so much more. Topics will range from contentious to fun, delightful, and everything in between. Thank you so much for tuning in and enjoy. Anaheed is a well-known belly dance teacher, performer, troupe director, and event producer in Southern California. She has received numerous awards for excellence, appeared in internationally distributed DVDs, including the Fez documentary, and has been performing professionally for over 45 years. Her dance background includes ballet, modern, Spanish, Persian, East Indian, as well as the techniques of yoga and Traeger bodywork. She brings experienced inspiration to her teaching and creates an outstanding learning opportunity for every student. The librarian by day and belly dancer by night. Please welcome Anaheed.
A lot of my stuff, well, I'm not on social media, and I think I explained some of my reasoning and things that happened in my other career, my library career, that meant I really wasn't on it, and I never did. So it's okay. But that means perhaps not many people know the philosophy and beginnings and I guess statements that I've made over the years. So.
Yeah, exactly. Which is part of why I wanted to do this whole series, because there are various resources out there, but some of them are not readily available. And because dancers are coming into this community in all kinds of different time frames, which is wonderful, and also through different avenues,
Right.
the history that they know is really different. And
No
so
kidding.
so it's kind of like vast assumptions that some of us make about like what is general public knowledge, and it's just like, oh wait, that's not something that has been a part of their experience at all. So it was kind of getting a chance to go through some of those things. So okay, well, we'll start at the actual literal beginning. So knowing that you caught the belly dance bug in the early 70s, this is also the height really of, or one of the first heights of belly dance across the United States. I remember seeing that in 1979, ABC's news show 2020 reported that over 1 million women were taking belly dance classes at that time. Like, so we have this beautiful height of things. Was there a particular performance or something that you came across that inspired you to dive?
Well, I was actually taking classes in the 60s. I was already taking classes in the 60s. Now, my teacher, just to kind of give you, my main teacher, Diane Weber, had not begun dancing till later in her dance career. So I saw her, this is gonna get a little complicated, at a Mensa function. You know what Mensa is, right? And she's a member and I'm a member, and I went to this event and she belly danced on a stage, and she did propped up, on her back, floor work, belly rolls visible from the profile side, and I was just jaw-dropping impressed. And admittedly, I had been exposed to some, I just call it family stuff, family things, dancing, folkloric stuff, but nothing of real belly dancing. And this would have been, I'm drumming that's the sound of me drumming my fingers. 65 when I saw her. And I was also a huge Star Trek fan at the time, and so was she. So it was pretty funny. So this Mensa event had invited literally all the Star Trek cast to attend, and I was helping to coordinate it. And I met Diane backstage as she was getting her bracelets on and getting dressed and everything, and we spoke a little bit. But she was at that point we weren't friends. I mean, I was just obviously an organizer and helpful, and she's very because of her background, she's been in Playboy, she's been in movies, and she knows how to keep her distance. So she was very polite, but she says, "Oh, do you have a question about dance?" She's putting on her stuff. And I said, "Oh, I'd love to talk about it." And she says, "Well, maybe another time. I'm prepping at this time, And I'm, okay, fine. And then when I saw her, I was just, it was she was capable of enrapturing a huge auditorium of people just with a look. She had that power. So it's not that I said, oh, I want the power, but I realized this is a dance I can do. It's not choreography. Absolutely not. It's the music comes in and the movement comes out. And I loved it. I really, really was drawn to, I always loved moving to music and rhythm, even when I was, oh, this is going to really date me. My parents were watching Lawrence Welk and they were playing Hawaiian music, and I would run to my room and come back with a plastic skirt and put it on, and I'd be. So I really didn't know what I was doing, but I was imitating and enjoying the music, and my parents thought it was cute. So they encouraged the fact that I enjoyed music and I enjoyed moving. And my mom was the one who really would put on music and say, here is a Dora Duncan style. Here's a scarf. Run around the house. And I did. So this had to have been when I was like 3. I mean, really, really young. Sort of, again, just I think the sound and the feeling the rhythm gave me was just, it went right to my core. So it took root. So I guess I've really gone maybe too far back to say the dance bug bit me when I was tiny, and then the belly dance bug bit me kind of coexisting weirdly with Star Trek. And I was an immense Trek fan. And as I found out later, so was Diane. So it was a lot of fun to interact with her as a dancer and a fan. So does that help a little?
Absolutely. And so
Okay.
you had started taking classes. So
Hmm.
was it that you started performing more professionally in that realm within the early 70s or?
Here's the way it went. I started taking classes when I was at UC Santa Barbara with a totally different teacher. It was like through the extension department. And it was kind of bizarre. I had finished all my general education classes, and then I was doing my major classes, and you had to fill in with extra credits. So I was taking all the different dance classes I could possibly get. So there was modern, there was jazz, there was ballet. I hadn't really had the background in it, but I dabbled, just to find out more about it. And then there was this belly dancing class, and I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. And what I liked about it was, again, no choreography. Here's the music, do something to it. So to me, belly dancing was improvisation. It was not about choreography. It was learning the tools in the movement that applied to the style you were doing, but not having to say, okay, you can only do this and you can only do that. So it was interpreting to the 60s with that style. Then when I came back to Los Angeles after I graduated with my degree, and I said, well, okay, I've got to work, I've got to do other things, but I want to find more teachers. And I looked for Diane. And I found her. I don't know if you remember, but it's not there anymore. It was a place called Every Woman's Village in the Valley, and it was kind of famous at the time. There were a lot of articles. If if you Google it, or I can send you articles. It was a big deal because it was like the first time women were brought together to say, hey, look under the hood of your car. Here's what's there. And this was, like I say, in the late 60s, early 70s. And that's where she taught. She had been invited by the 3 women founders of Every Woman's Village to come. And she had her own, they were like little bungalows, and she had her own studio and she'd set everything up. And she was a teacher who pushed you as hard as you wanted to be pushed. And at the time, I did not think about going professional. I just thought, this feels so good. But the way you went, and now maybe I'm branching into something different, but her classes were, you learned from beginning how to play finger cymbals. You started out in a beginning class learning how to play and move to zills. You progressed, and when you graduated to intermediate, you were able to do maybe 3 minutes of playing and moving with the vocabulary you had. And then intermediate was where you were the little sponge. That was, I call that with my students too. I said that to them. I said, okay, you're in sponge mode. There's nothing on your face. You're just staring back at me while I tell you stuff. They're just sponges. They can't push out anything. They're just absorbing what you're giving them. So that was me in intermediate, just sucking it up. And she gave us so much. She even brought in, because she was working with drummers, and she wanted the drummers learning to work with maybe dancers who weren't that experienced. So when we learned drum solos, she'd bring in Samir Masood, and there he was, playing for us, and we're like, oh boy. And then when you went into, if you stuck with it and you said, yeah, I really do want to learn more about this and I want to get the best I can be. She says, okay, you're going to go into the professional class. And in the professional class, you dance every other week in a full costume, as much as you've got. And I'm going to bring in drummers occasionally. And the way it works is that this is her, Diane, talking. You don't get to pick the music. I'm going to put on her reel-to-reel tape recorder whatever I feel like putting on for you. And if you're not playing your zills right, I'm going to stop it till you get it back on again. And you don't know what you're getting. And that's just like it was in the clubs. Back then, if you worked in the clubs, the two different clubs could play the same song differently. You never knew what you were going to get. So it was great training for her to say, okay, here you go. And then if you were off, if you weren't playing Bellady, she'd shut the music off and she'd say, that's not Bellady. Play it. Doom, doom, tack, tack, doom, tack, tack, and you'd get it. And then she'd turn the music back on. So you were in front of your peers, in front of her, being corrected, which is part of the learning. I admit some students, which is understandable, would leave crying because they could not stand the corrections, or they were, very, very, very sensitive. And I guess from whatever was in my family, I knew you just had to tough it out. You just stuck with it. So anyway, all I can say is I progressed through the levels. And when I was when I was at the professional level class, she says, okay, she gave me my first job for the grand fee of $35. Because I had danced for fun, in the living room. My friends gather and I put on a scarf and do stuff, but nothing, complete. But when I finally had the costume together, my zills were adequate. And I got this big, which I still have, and I got to sell it on eBay, this huge reel-to-reel tape player, because you had to bring in your own sound. There was nobody going to play it for you. So I'd lug this 40-pound thing in, set it up, and run the sound. And that was for $35. And the first time I did it, it was like, wow, look at the expression. Because in a class, when you'd had to dance for your classmates. She would do performance night every other week, wherever you'd be up there and one after another, you'd be doing a routine. When you were doing that, you could see people were just really serious, and they would clap and they would zagaree and they would be supportive. And at the end, again, I'll go back to the performance thing, but what Diane would encourage and require in the class is that after everyone finished, she would say, okay, I'm going to go around now and I'm going to ask you what you thought of what you saw. And you can say good or bad, and hopefully both. So you not only learned how to dance, you learned how to watch and listen and hear what other people noticed and what other people said and focused on. Because it would always be, oh, I noticed her bra was coming apart, or so-and-so would notice, her skirt is I'm saying little piddly things, but that's what the audience is going to notice too. So you needed to hear that in a safe setting where you weren't going to get fired because you didn't know what you were doing. So anyway, going back to the performance, when that happened, that was in 73 or 4, because I had been, prior to that, I know I'm overlapping, Diane had invited me to be in the troupe, and the troupe was choreography, which again, that was a new experience in a sense. I mean, I knew choreography from being in high school, but I had not been in a situation where, like with the Debke, you're holding on to the person. In high school, you were, okay, they're going that way, I'm going this way, no touching. Well, in different kinds of Middle Eastern dance, you are touching, you are doing stuff, you're overlapping and playing finger cymbals at the same time when you're trying to do 9/8. So that performing experience I'd already had. I'd already been on a stage with a group and some solo little teeny moments, but the solo in a party, that happened. And then it was like, I'm going on for this. Oh boy.
And when you said when you had your costume ready, so does that mean that you're constructing the various pieces of your
Oh,
costume?
absolutely. You learn to sew with fishing line and pliers, and you learn how to weld or solder. I'm sorry, solder, not welding. Solder the links on your coins so they wouldn't fall off. And I still have coins sewn onto another costume that are that old. And these are replica coins. These are not, like, cost less imports up in San Francisco. Those are real coins. And I do have some of those as well. And I do have some that when I went to Egypt, we just kept keeping all our change. And then one girl had a drill press at home and she drilled holes for us. But anyway, making your costume and making it fit correctly, that Diane was really good at. And the bra, at least for me, having cleavage, oh my God. That was when I have to say, I had a chain belt first. The chain belt was easy, swags of chain with coins hanging off and you're just squeezing the rings shut. That I could do real easy. A bra where you had to go down to Frederick's to get them back then. A shell cut bra was not that common, and that's what you needed. A shell cut bra, cover it, and then put the straps on it. And the way Diane said, it says, just think of it as bookends. You're pushing whatever you got to the middle. And she said, that's what you want to look like. You want to look like the mother goddess. That's what you want to be. You don't want to be, oh, I'm just coming in off the beach and, I got this outfit on. No, you're bigger than life. And then side note, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got when I first started working in a Greek nightclub was the lady singer. Her name was Katie. Kaya notice? I forgot her name. Katie. Anyway, she pulled me inside and she says, honey, if you stuff it on stage, you got to stuff it off stage too, or they'll know it's all fake. And so, you have to be dressed on the stage as the performer and really show everything. And off stage, you had to wear an elegant cocktail dress. And if it was flat, that didn't match. So anyway, lessons learned. And someday I think I will write a book. Sisterhood of the Dressing Room.
Oh, yeah.
I'm telling you, all the stuff that you either, sometimes with non-dance performers, Greek singers or whomever, or other dancers dressing together, hopefully not too competitively, but sometimes it was. And if you were smart, you always zipped your costume up into your garment bag and made sure it wasn't easily cigarette burned. That sounds kind of crazy, but that happened. And that was in a Greek nightclub. They're very competitive there. So that was a different environment.
Well, and that was
So,
an era where there were a lot of clubs and a variety of dancers making their full living performing.
there was Diane actually said in her class, she says, I'm not going to create Diane Weber carbon copies. I don't want people to go out and they'll go, oh, look, that's Diane Weber dancing. She wanted us to take what we learned from her and put our own spin on it. And she said to us, she says, I know I'm creating competition for all of you. There's going to be a lot of dancers out there. And you remember, that's when MECTA started. MECTA was originally Middle Eastern Cabaret Dance Association, and it was a union. And Diane didn't march with us, but I marched with the others. And, it was something that helped. There was a huge flood of dancers that just were so desperate to dance. They'd say, oh, I'll just work for tips. you know how that went. So, that being said, I know I'm digressing, but Mecta, I believe, though it is no longer with us, served an excellent purpose as it changed Culture and Dance Association rather than Cabaret Dancers Association in welcoming new dancers and giving them some kind of a foothold in the community to know what was going on. So that was very helpful.
And I believe one of the first kind of union based aspects to think about what is appropriate pay, what is professional,
Right. Mm-hmm.
thinking about like a certain kind of agreement across the community as to what
What's
the expectations are and
mm-hmm.
really for the work conditions.
Right. And the whole issue, of course, was that you never had, well, I don't know if there is any now even, written contract of any kind. You were cash and carry, and that more or less conformed to the labor laws, except in the places that were open really late and sold alcohol all night, and they had to have an entertainment license. And they would come in and check more the musicians than the dancers. They say, okay, how much do you get in tips? How much do you take home a night? You know, and they wanted to know. And you deciding how to report it on your income tax got a little interesting. Um, and that was a whole other, yeah, interesting thing. I did not make my full-time living as a belly dancer. I did supplement my income all through my life. I went to graduate school when I got my master's degree, and I was going to school. It was like I squeezed it all into 2.5 days a week, and then I was belly dancing 3 nights a week. And so I'd come into the 8 o'clock class like, but I made it. I made it. So again, I'm kind of throwing in a bunch of side issues here, but the rights and regulations in the clubs changed over time, but the fact that we stood up for our rights was also brought home to the club owners, that they just couldn't barge into the dressing room when we were changing and say, hey, give me your tips. That wasn't kosher. Although it happened. So
And I think, I mean, there's been ongoing discussions after MECTA kind of was still in existence, but not really working as a union. There was a lot
right.
of various conversations happening around the Southern California community as to
Mm-hmm.
what kind of agreements could we make together. But there was never really anything that kind of came more cohesively together
Right.
across the community as to like standards of pay or anything.
Yeah. Or even names of dance movements. We can't agree.
No,
It's
not at all.
yeah, and I get it. I guess in the sense that our lifeblood was nightclub work at that point, and that's kind of where it grew. And I sort of see the history as, the floods of immigration. After World War II, the Greeks, the Turks, the Armenians, the Syrians, the groups that came in demanded entertainment. And they supplied the musicians, and it was American girls that danced, because good Armenian girls and good Middle Eastern girls weren't going to get up on that stage and show their bodies. So we were trying to fill the gap that was required of us. And while in the beginning, it was just like anybody could walk in, and if they could play their zills and did have a nice costume, you could do a night's work. But then as it got to be more and more competitive, and then it got to be a free for all. But I think MECTA streamlined it somewhat. But again, in the larger dance world, we are not yet considered a character dance, like flamenco or others, Spanish dance. And I guess as time goes on, I really hope we can enter, I guess, the mainstream dance world with a title or respect. I don't know. I don't know. What do you think? What do you think about that?
I think that's a really complex space of things
Yeah.
because we're basing terminology and
Yeah, we
content
don't.
that's really embedded in entertainment and
Mm-hmm.
really separated in many ways from its cultural roots,
Mm-hmm.
and is also a very specific thing to being in the United States. Like
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking about these nightclubs, right? The fact that when you're
Mhm,
dancing there, you would have a very diverse audience. So you might
mhm,
have one song that was Syrian and then one song that was Armenian, and then, like, so
mhm,
being
mhm,
able to have a, like, we're using this term to cover actually a really wide diversity of different dance forms. I think the fact
mhm,
that all of this is embedded in entertainment in this kind of mixed immigrant
mhm,
experience makes it
mhm.
extra complicated to try to define from an academic standpoint.
I know. It is. It's so true. The thing that I know is going to, I don't know, maybe come eventually, is it will be more standardized, but there still has to be room for creativity. And what Americans are known for is taking something and creatively changing it. And we don't tell Germans, oh, you can't play our jazz music, or Japanese, no, you can't play our jazz music. So I'm going to say, maybe speaking a little out of turn, I don't feel that being archaeologically correct is the way to go for belly dance. I think it's evolved, and exactly as you said, it's become an entertainment art. And an entertainment art, like, okay, yeah, there's a comedians union, but you don't all tell the same jokes. So you got to have standards, but creativity within the standards to allow for growth. Otherwise, you become stagnant if you're so solidified. But we'll see what happens. We'll see. Oh, my coffee shop.
But I think part of that is the idea of standardization is complex
Mhm,
too, because it usually is really based within a very kind of Eurocentric quality of evaluation.
mhm,
And I think the current times right now is really getting a chance to acknowledge that and think about how
mhm,
we could build like a sense of like core curriculum around something that is
mhm,
based on kind of Euro standards of aesthetics or beauty or
mhm,
education experience, right? So the concept of like these are dances that were passed along in social settings, usually in very familial social setting spaces, and
mhm.
how within the kind of American experience too, we've really changed that, right?
Yeah.
Especially over the years. Now there's so many classes that people can take and
Mhm,
recitals that people can do.
mhm,
The nightclub is maybe like a very far off, smaller kind of percentage of the experience that dancers have when they're performing anymore, and how all of that kind of shifts in the concept of curriculum
mhm.
or education standards or anything like that too. So
Right, 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 right. There's there's ways to find venues that work for your expression. I mean, there is everything from lecture demonstrations, which I've also done a lot of, and that's through various cities. I mean, the city of Los Angeles, Long Beach, different ones where you present both entertainment and information. And I would bring a musician with me, and I would improvise and show and bring people up to dance, so it would be both. You're gonna you're gonna get up if you want to, or you can do the sit down belly dance, just do your hands and get the audience to know that it's safe. And in what I felt was my work with lecture demonstration was creating an audience, creating people, and children love it. They just love it. They just have the best time with it. And it's, again, not just girl children, but guys would get up and want to do it too. And it's all about respecting each other's space, enjoying the way your body feels when you move. And that, I think, is a real American contribution. That is, you can get up and enjoy this and don't feel ashamed of it in a mixed setting, not just the women dancing for women or the men just dancing for men. Mixed couples, mixed, and everybody saying, yeah, that's really fun and it's beautiful. So I think that's our contribution, and I hope we can keep sharing it.
I think that that brings it back in this really beautiful full circle way to its social dance origins.
Right.
And
Hmm.
I think, at least in my experience in research, that in general, especially over the last few decades, that there is really a longing for some kind of social space in that type of way where we can all belong, right?
Hmm.
Kind of subcultures really
Hmm.
foster that for people so that they can feel really connected, especially when maybe our heritage identity doesn't bring us into a community that we can feel recognized fully. So we have these
Mhm.
Trekkies, right, that get a chance to
Yeah.
feel more connected to people maybe that they're not
Mhm.
related to in any way whatsoever, but
Mhm.
they have these like this
A
love.
passion. They share a passion.
And
Right.
our dance community is really that too, and like having
Mhm.
a social space with music
Mhm.
or dance or costuming or whatever the case is, right, is that beautiful
Mhm.
way for us to have a shared sense of belonging.
Right. Right. And as you were speaking, I was thinking of what is our American heritage? Ruth St. Denis, Isadora Duncan. They were doing things that the Europeans were not doing. And that growth of what you would call American freeform style, I think went right into whatever, if you want to call it modern dance, our form of expression to Middle Eastern music. I think we could say our roots do come back. Ruth St. Denis was totally into Far East Indian, but some of what she did had the arms and the things that we can recognize and say, yeah, that's a part of what we do now. So, American heritage.
Complex and turbulent, especially right now, I think, in a really interesting way that is unpacking. Um,
Good point. Good point. Good point.
Back around, thinking about too, like the American experience, like the
Hmm.
company is something that is more prevalently a part of people's experience now, right? Like it's much
Hmm.
more common for people to dance in a group, in choreographies, doing all these different pieces and repertoire and full shows and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So you became the managing director of the Perfumes of Araby in, what was it, 79?
It was actually 80. I remember this a little because I got married in 79 and Diane came to my wedding reception. And she actually said to me at that point, she said, you know, if you're going to keep doing this dance thing and keep up with this, I'm going to allow you to use the name, which I have trademarked, Diane Weber's Perfumes of Araby. And I want you guys to check back with me if you want to, because her derivation went all the way back to Leona Wood at UCLA for some of the choreography, not all of it. And we all knew we were not presenting, like I said, archaeologically authentic. We were presenting theatrical interpretations that resonated with our ethnic audiences and appealed to the American audiences. So let me go back to what your question is why a group? Why do a group? A group was Diane's reason for creating it was to go to the Renaissance Fair and give her students a location to perform. And she was originally invited as a soloist. And then she realized, this is a huge stage. And she can do it. She could do anything. But she said, I could have a line of women behind me. I could have, and this was like kind of paralleling what Jamila was doing up north. So the whole Ren Fair experience, I think, created the opportunity for large numbers of women to be on a stage in you want to call it a comfortable environment, working with others, not feeling that they're on the spot. Diane did that. And then when she wanted to kind of just back off, which is fine, it was time for her to maybe just be doing other things. She was creatively writing and doing a bunch of things. Also, I did decide that yes, we could do different kinds of venues. And when I would dance, for example, at a retirement place, they'd say, can you come and do a bigger show? And I said, yeah. And let's look at a contract on this and make sure. Because sometimes it was just an oral agreement. Yes, I'll do it for $100 or whatever. But when it got to be the group or musicians involved, then it had to be a contract. So it expanded as the demand, I would say in the 80s was really big in the 80s. Again, another flood after Beirut was destroyed. There were a lot of wonderful, wonderful Lebanese musicians that came over, and we had fabulous musicians, I think, throughout the 80s. So I made use of those musicians, and Diane had set up, like, there were a couple of schools, like we would do Caltech. We do Caltech every year. Yeah, so fun. And this would be, again, a way to reach out, make it more accessible to the general public. And that I felt was more group friendly. Group friendly, wasn't as aggressive to individual women at a party than a single dancer going around and vamping, even if it was the birthday boy. You know, your competition when you're doing that. But if there's a group of girls there and they're all doing cute stuff, then you're not individually a threat. So group things are very helpful sometimes. And I think that was a way to go forward. Are you wanting to know about administration and craziness of egos? Maybe not.
These are like such an interestingly complex thing. As soon as you are working with a group of people, did
Mhm.
was your repertoire? Did you create the repertoire? Was the repertoire a variety of different choreographers, or how did that all work?
There were certain songs, okay, I would call it core dances. One was literally called The Ability, and we evolved it a little further, but it was still the basic one that Diane had done. There was another one called, uh, you can either say Sepastia Bar or Bastia Bar, and it was an Armenian song, and you had to do it. You had certain hand movements and positions that were pretty set, and it we kept, and the Deb key we kept, and the Deb key. You know, there's lots of Deb keys. There's lots of Deb keys. We added. It's so funny. They had musical signatures. We added something called the 2/4, which every time we did it in our big show, we would add different props because it would always start with a V formation. And one time we came out with glitter balls. Yeah, here's our glitter balls and our V formation. Another time we came out and we had ribbons. So we essentially took, I would call it, some of the choreography and evolved it. We also did make up other dances, but I think the part that would start, my phone is pinging, go away. The beginning, the end, and we would always have the melody. And then the parts in the middle could vary, could become, people would come forward and say, I have an idea. And I'd say, okay, let's talk about it. Let's play with it. And we got to be pretty good with what, the group mind. And as you started something, it grew. Later, when we started really spinning off and we were doing Pirates of Araby, we did a whole, gosh, it was really fun. We had a zombie pirate begin the show with the skull and crossbones. And then we came out and we were feisty pirate girls. And it was that we took to Cairo Carnival for years, and it went really, it was fun. And that was totally evolved by the different dancers that were in the group at that time. And we used Kamal. You remember Kamal? He's still out there. He doesn't dance, but he was with us at that time, and he was our zombie pirate. So
Collaborative.
yeah. So using, I guess, ideas that are current, things that are out there that relate to both young and old, and you can reach people, I think, in different ways depending on your vocabulary. And I call it, I don't mind if you use fusion, and I love some of the things that people are doing, but you have to do it with skill and understanding what you're coming from and what you're going to, and then it works better. So again, kind of went all way.
I mean, with the group, you were doing a wide range of different types of gigs and bookings and such. Did Cafe Bellady come out of wanting to do something more solidified, where you had control of the details? Or?
Here's the scoop. I call it a sequence of dreams that I wanted to fulfill. The first one was to become a solo dancer. The second one was to form a group. The third one was to create or find my own environment, a theater, where I could bring dancers and have them feel safe hire musicians in a theatrical setting. And that's where Cabaret Bellady evolved, is that the first setting was the Nazame Pars Arts Center. And that, we were so blessed with that. I knew Nazame and Linda, the couple, that it was essentially her mother's old house. It was completely remodeled and the stage was added to it. And it was perfect. You had a great dressing room, you had a stage setting, everything was safe. We did that 98 to 2003, I think. I don't remember now. Was that our 5-year mission? Anyway, it was successful, really enjoyed it, but when they split, we couldn't continue at that location. So we did find some other places, the Granada Pavilion, a couple of other little theaters that we used, one in North Hollywood, another one, oh my gosh, there were some really strange little theaters. But anyway, we tried it, and then we came to rest at the Granada Pavilion. And as you know, the swap meet was another extension of providing a space for dancers to be in. So that was kind of a focus that I had been doing on a small level, having vendors and doing a show. But then I expanded the vending thing, and it wasn't a show anymore. I mean, that was coexisting with Cafe Bellady. So it, for a lot of reasons, it was, I like to feel it growing the energy in the community, and that was my purpose. So my dream went forward. I have one more dream though, and I haven't realized it yet. My one more dream is, if I could figure out the location and the space to do it, I would love to invite other teachers and make it strictly a teaching conference, teaching teachers how to teach. And that might start to address, what are you teaching and what are you calling it? And if there was something that we could form on the West Coast, maybe I don't know what they're doing on the East Coast. I really don't. But that would be my final gift, is teaching teachers how to teach. And where to go with that, we'll see.
Yeah. Ooh, I can't wait to see that happen.
I know. I've really thought about it. I don't know. I don't know. I've had different thoughts on how to approach it, but that is something, and I would probably really, really need to talk to other teachers and see if there was interest, like Angelica Nemeth, who is a wonderful teacher, just to see if there's any serious consideration of that, or would they feel like we did in the past, are you creating competition for your own job?
Well, and that was what kind of made me think of when you were talking earlier about
Mm-hmm.
nightclub dancers, right? I feel like now that
Mm-hmm.
nightclub work is not necessarily the main economic driver, although
Mm-hmm.
I don't think a majority of us are actually like motivated by money, but otherwise we would have picked way more lucrative.
Mm-hmm.
But that most dancers are now actually making their income from teaching, how it has created a very interesting, contentious, competitive space, unfortunately, whereas in either state, in my opinion, everyone has
Mm-hmm.
something unique to offer. And when we're thinking about an audience or we're thinking about a student, what they're looking for is also unique. So
Mm-hmm.
there should be a very diverse space and opportunities and offerings available so that everyone can find
Mm-hmm.
a home that really resonates and inspires them and helps them grow.
Mm-hmm.
But that's my opinion. But
Oh, I hear you on that. I hear you, because some women are coming for social interaction. Some women are coming for a heavy duty workout. Some women are coming because they want to feel beautiful. They want to feel they're not judged and they're just accepted for who they are. There still has to be some, I want to call it, I don't want to say judgment. I want to say goals, that a dancer who comes in and says, I want to learn this dance, you don't just say, well, I'm going to learn some of it, but I don't want to do what I don't want to do. Well, you got to you got to be in the class. You don't just stand off and watch when you don't like what you see. You have to be in the class. You're not allowed to just film it. You're not allowed to just sit there and audit. You have to move. This is a movement class. So it wasn't like I wouldn't allow anybody to take notes. I mean, someone had an ankle injury and she said, could I just come? And I said, oh yeah, of course, of course. But someone who said, well, can you give me a discounted price to just come in and take notes? No, that's not the way it works. And can I come in and just film you? No. I mean, you can't these days. I know teaching in a big room, you don't know what's going on. And, so, if you can hear what I'm saying, then I want you to be present. I don't want you to be looking through a camera lens and not being in the class. So that's all. That's all. Just be there to do what you want in the class.
So you have been actively a part of the Southern California scene for many decades at this point.
Oh, yes, my dear. Oh, yes. Yeah.
And you have gotten a chance to see and experience a wide range of changes. What are some of the bigger changes that kind of stand out to you of how the dance and or the community have evolved over those years?
Um, Community wise, teachers create it. Teachers start the community and generate that type of connection is what my feeling is. Now, I know social media is a big part of it, but I mean, as distant as I am from that, I'll address, several things here. The social media is talking about movement. That can be relevant, but verbal stuff is not as relevant as movement, being in a class, interacting with the teacher, interacting with other students, and participating. Critiquing and talking and talking and talking. I almost feel Bert Balladine was right on when he said, I don't know if you remember him, right? Bert would say things like, the more you talk, the less you do. So keep doing. Don't just talk about it. There's relevance to the quote unquote academic publish or perish. The interaction for the dance community is event or perish. You have to have something going on. And the events have changed, as you noticed, and the sponsors have changed and the purpose has changed, which, okay, that means, I think, again, teachers or sometimes just small groups can create their own small venue of some kind. So I'm not saying you need to do more Zooming. Zooming has been a pretty amazing connection for a lot of people, and I was surprised at how well it could work. But that being said, the, the now that we can be back in the room, I find that much better. The style of dancing that has evolved, I'm a little, okay, let's put it this way. I find somewhat not as soulful. The ability to express the music has become sublimated to the drilling out of as many steps and as many techniques as you possibly can. And I understand that. That is a student or someone who has said, "Oh, that must be the way to get real recognition, is to be really fast and really good and really doing all these things all at once." To really capture your audience, you need to express the music. And a teacher needs to pull out of you your connection to the music. Some people, and I fully get this, some people are lyrical dancers. They really want to do only fast. Some people are taksim dancers. They really like the slow best. Fine. If you can do a little bit of both, you're going to have a wider range of enjoyment and a wider range of expression. The musical soul needs to be found by the dancers and used. Otherwise, all you're doing is looking for faster, quicker, harder technique that doesn't necessarily grow your dance heart or your soul.
Poetics of movement.
Yeah.
I don't know
So,
if you're thinking about like doing all the tricks. It was making me think of when you were talking about the sponge, right?
yeah.
The sponge is being squeezed out. You're like, here's all my stuff.
Right. There you go. I know. And there, again, the some of the recorded music has no breath in it, has no pause, has no interval in it. And it doesn't mean it has to be a dead interval, but a moment, just a breath that can really center your feeling into the music rather than constant movement forward. So there needs to be, I think, I guess the type of orchestration you would hear in a full out classical orchestra, where there's breaths between segments, breaths between instrumentation, and layers of instrumentation. That's what a tocsin is all about. The tocsin can have the bass line just continue, or the real hard one is a free tocsin where there is no rhythm. All there is an instrument, and you're just going into that and letting it come in, and what comes out. You have to see for yourself where it'll take you. So again, it does not mean that your whole dance has to be at that, I call it, slower level, but you need a variety dynamically and pacing wise to be expressive. And I guess that's what I'm missing. Okay, I'll take it back down to that. The dynamic of musical expression has somewhat faded from a lot of the dancing that I see today. I love the ladies, I respect them, but I want to see some soul.
Absolutely. Well, I'm extremely excited about this year's Legends, and I'm very, very honored and grateful that you'll be teaching and performing
Oh,
for it. And you're going to be doing retro veil work, 60s reloaded. Did you want to talk a little bit about what that is?
what I'd love to do with it, if and I hope the ladies will bring whatever veil they want. I mean, I usually say 3 yard, sorry, yeah, they not necessarily silk, but 3 yard polyester, 3 yard chiffon. Bring something, and we're going to learn how to handle it with and without finger cymbals, if you want to, because that's a whole art in and of itself. How to put it on and dance it off. And then what do you do? And how do you discard it? So it's all the levels of veil use. Now, of course, there's audience interaction. That can be a whole other class. How do you interact with it? But I want to show manipulation, travel, adornment with it, and moving across the floor with it, all those things that you can do. Does not mean that you have to, I'm not going to do choreography. I'm going to give a sheet, and it's going to have a list of tools. And I actually may do 2 sheets, because when I was doing it in the past, I would do a whole class just on veil tucks, because there were so many at the time. Dancers would develop their own tucks. But in some situations now, it's almost like if you come out with a veil, that's all the time you get, and then discard it. But I will discuss that too. I'll discuss it, like, for example, are you working in a Moroccan restaurant where you're covering 3 rooms and you're running from room to room? You're not going to want to really leave your veil in somebody's lap, or it's going to get sauce all over it. So what do? A neck wrap, hold it, even put a little piece of elastic in it. And so you've got it, and you can still play your finger cymbals. Many, many, many ideas, but I want to cover the basics, and I'm going to make a mention and see if this is suitable for what you, I don't know, may or may not get in terms of registration. I like to present the basics and say to those that are there, if you're an advanced performer, or if you ever want to teach, I'm giving you a level of instruction that may be lower than what you're used to, but it could teach you how to approach it with a student. And I've tried to be that way myself. If I go to a class and I go, oh, I think I know all this, but you don't say that. You just look and you go, well, how is this person teaching what I've taught? How are they doing it? So if someone says, well, why isn't she doing circular veil? Well, that's another class. That's another class. And so is double veil, double circular veil, all that stuff. So I think I'm going to keep it with covering everything that I know about beginning and basic veil work, including tucks, including everything with and without finger cymbals. So if they can, I don't know if they will, if they can bring their finger cymbals and a 3 yard veil, they'll have lots to do.
Lots of fun. And I think since, well, really when we became very Egyptian focused within the community, right? The veil
Mm-hmm.
moved from being kind of its own art into
Mm-hmm.
kind of the opera coat that you entered with and then you tossed aside. Um,
Right.
so a lot of dancers don't necessarily get a chance to learn veil technique, or that there is actual technique behind how you can dance with it and how to use
Yeah.
it in a practical manner. So I think this will be really valuable for people.
I hope so. I get it that again, the quote unquote retro style is considered retro, but if you have some more in your toolkit, you can pull it out and use it. And it's a great interactive tool for private parties or the type of restaurant setting where you do have to be more of an entertainer rather than an artist. And then on a bigger stage, you can use some of the bigger movements if you want to. So we'll try to cover the levels of like how far away are you? Don't get your veil stuck in the chandelier. Be aware of that. Things like that. I was just going to ask, do you use veil or does it apply to what you like to do?
I do. It really depends on the audience and the space.
Hmm.
Like
Correct.
doing, yeah, more nightclub, restaurant kinds of side things, I generally do use it as a part of my entrance at this point, not
Hmm.
necessarily as its own separate dance. There's definitely been times where I've done theatrical performances where it's more of a lyrical veil interpretation, where it's a whole part, it's the whole dance actually.
Right. Right.
I love doing group veil numbers too, because you can create such epic visual
Really? Yes.
the dancers
Yeah.
moving through space, and how you
Hmm.
get the fabric to really move with the music and that type of way.
Hmm.
And just, yeah, it depends. Like if I'm working with more of a Lebanese restaurant or audience, right, that's going to be much quicker, fast veil. Yeah, if it's more Egyptian, then I just kind of enter and like put it aside because they're
Yeah.
there with the veil. But
In a safe place. Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I've seen I call it the fan veils, the ones that are attached to the fan. Those are lovely. I had a class and did that with my students and we all had fun with it, but we all said, well, how do and then we talked about that. Okay, are you going to tuck it in your back when you come out and then whip it out later, or place it if you're on a stage, then you could place it on the stage and pick it up, and utilize it. Props are a whole other thing. That's a whole other thing, and sword work is another thing I love to do. But I think veil is a opportunity, I hope, to get dancers to be more musically expressive, both with the fabric and with their bodies. So we'll see if that happens.
well, thank you so much for this time. It was really fantastic. We've got such a rich kind of space of history
I
and
know. Well,
aspects, and some really pivotal pillars, actually, especially within the Southern California scene, that have been greatly impacting, influencing, and inspiring some of us.
I really think so.